All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today I'll be doing my South Carolina versus Arkansas preview and prediction. Looking at the spread, the Hogs are 7.5-point favorites for the second week in a row. Over/under set at 52.5. 12 p.m. Eastern Time with ESPN covering this game from Fayetteville. Arkansas 13-10 all-time in the series. SC has won the last three, though. Looking at the South Carolina offense, who's a bit of a slow start last week, but they ended up scoring 35 points against Georgia State. Spencer Rattler, was less than stellar in his debut. 1 touchdown, 2 picks, 227. Completion percentage wasn't ideal. But Rattler, after the game on Instagram, I seen him. I don't believe he did this last year, so that's why I'm bringing it up, is I did see him post, 1-0, great team win and whatnot, which is good to see because his character has always been a big flaw in his, his game and whatnot. So I definitely want to see him continue to do that. And it's going to allow him to thrive even more so. So this is a high-end talent. Everyone knows that Rattler, big arm. He can be accurate when he's playing his best ball, and not the best start in the world in his debut with Shane Beamer, but I think this team certainly got something cooking on offense with all this talent around him. It's a respectable group of pass catchers. Josh Vann and Jaheim Bell are the headliners. I know Jaheim Bell was a little beat up last week, but he did still end up with 4 grabs for 18 yards, and Josh Vann only had a grab for 9 yards. He was not playing in that game. It looks like Jalen Brooks and Antoine Wells, the James Madison transfer, ended up getting a bulk of the receptions. They combined for 11 each. And I think that's good news to see some of these younger guys getting involved because Van, Stogner, Bell, you know what you're going to get from them, but seeing these other guys step up, they have a deep group. They're pretty versatile as well. I do think that Van needs more than just 1 reception a game. I know he had a drop on a 3rd down. That's obviously not something you want to see. But I think they got plenty of guys to get involved. Same can be said at running back. Marshawn Lloyd, former high-end 5-star who, is coming off a torn ACL from a year or two ago. They weren't great running the ball, 32 carries for 79 yards against Georgia State. It's not ideal. This is obviously a big part of their game. They was struggling last year was ability to run the ball strongly. Jaheim Bell did lead the team with 39 yards on 7 carries. So they're obviously getting, he's a versatile guy. I expected him to have a Kyle Pitts type season because of the talent, kind of the situation he's in, because he can play slot and whatnot. He can play out wide, at least in my opinion, with Austin Stogner coming over that allows him to do that. 6'3", 230. Juju McDonald, he only got a few carries himself, but this running game needs to do more. 2.4 yards per carry is not ideal one bit. This offensive line is a big reason why. It's just a struggle bus area for them. I do believe they got all their starters back, and I do see 4 seniors on there. So these guys are going to have to progress. They're not facing the toughest of fronts here against Arkansas, but this is still a team I expect to do a lot this season in the East. They're not going to be able to do that if they're struggling up front. It's not going to make things easier for Spencer Rattler. He had problems last year at Oklahoma. A big reason why was because his offensive line was not good. They could not run the ball one bit. They did not allow him to have time to take shots downfield. So that's kind of, similar grouping here right now. I do overall like this offense. They do need to run the ball better. But they have a deep group of receivers, and they have an incredibly talented quarterback. So I think a big thing here, I said this last week about Arkansas, and I was right when I said it, is that the speed receivers for Cincinnati, they're going to have a big day downfield, and they did. The numbers were pretty impressive from those guys, Tyler Scott and Trey Tucker. There's also a lot of overthrows and underthrows by their quarterback, Ben Bryant, in that game. So Arkansas kind of got bailed out. We'll talk about their defense here in a minute, but that's one thing to watch is downfield. Spencer Rattler can put it on you deep. I don't really know too much about the speed of these pass catchers, but they are talented guys. Like Wells is a heck of a route runner, Van as well. And that's all it takes is a good route. Sometimes it's more about fundamentals than straight-up speed. In South Carolina, they certainly have those in their receivers. Looking at the Arkansas offense, led by Kendall Briles, RPO-style attack here. KJ Jefferson was pretty great in week 1. 223 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Also added another on the ground with 56 yards. It was a hard-fought 56 yards, but he still brought that dual-threat nature to the table. 216 total rushing yards against the Bearcats for Arkansas, which was kind of expected. 20 carries, 117 yards for Raheem Sanders. The rest of backs, though, only got 5 carries for 34 yards. Green, Dom Johnson, I know he was a little beat up coming into the game, but, how will the touches get dished out? Obviously, they didn't need it, but him and Jefferson, Sanders and Jefferson, that is, they both had, I think, 38 carries combined or something like that. Maybe that's good, maybe it's not. I don't want to see my star players doing that every single game, though, combining for 20 touches each. I like to see workhorses, but especially my quarterback. Obviously, that's something great he's good at with that Cam Newton-like size. He's a heck of a runner. I want to see him, take less hits, though. Trey Knox stepped up at tight end, 6 grabs, 75 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Their best deep threat in last week's game, though, Warren Thompson, only 2 grabs for 22 yards. The passing game, I mean, they put up their yardage, and Knox was great. I think they did a good job of distributing the ball, but there was not many big plays in the passing game outside of Knox. Matt Landers, at about 14 yards per catch. The Toledo transfer, the former Georgia player, Jaden Hazelwood, he's a great downfield blocker. It's really going to allow this running game this year to open up even more. The numbers weren't bad from the receivers. Landers 3 for 43, 3 for 42 for Hazelwood, and of course Knox. I just read his stat line. But overall, this is not a deep group of receivers. Keyshawn Jackson, he didn't play as much as I expect. I don't think he even got a touch in this ball game. This is a dual threat style offense, though. Of course, the RPOs really like to get things going. They're not deep at receiver, though, and their speedster didn't really get involved last week, so it remains to be seen what they will do this week against a great secondary. So it's going to start with a run, of course. Maybe things will open up downfield. The passing game, I thought overall, it was a nice balanced attack from the Bearcats, or from the Razorbacks. O-line versus tough D-line didn't phase well. They allowed 9 tackles for loss. They do got guys, though, like Dalton Wagner, Sergey Stromberg leading the way. And South Carolina, their defensive front has, underperformed at times the past couple of years despite having all this talent. So this might be a good bounce-back week for the Hogs' offensive front. Looking at the South Carolina defense, getting off the box will be big for the secondary because they like to work the boundaries with those screens, those quick passes. Is the Arkansas's offense. Of course, they like to get to the edge when they're running the ball as well. Dynamite back in coverage, like I said, Cam Smith, this was a top 10 secondary, I'm pretty sure, in yards per game allowed. They also had a Devontae Reed coming over from Central Michigan at safety. He has had a big week 1. A lot of veterans here. Everyone was coming back. They added Reed, of course, RJ Roderick, Darius Rush, 2 seniors in the back end. This is a great secondary. It's going to be dynamite all season long. That's why this is going to be a big test for Arkansas, because if the run gets slowed down, then, there might be some issues for this passing game, which is going to lead to the offense kind of stalling out. Brad Johnson, though, he's going to be a leader in the middle. He's going to be key to making sure his counterparts are lined up correctly versus this run game, because they will tear you apart. Mohamed Kaba, Sherrod Green, whoever's on the field, Debo Williams, some respectable linebackers here. But Brad Johnson, he is one of the longest tenured guys on this roster, and he's going to be very crucial in getting the job done for the Gamecocks against the run, because that's where it's going to start. That's where it's going to end for them. This defensive line, I was talking about Jordan Burch, Zach Pickens, 2 former 5-stars. Jordan Strong, a guy I went to high school with, actually, 2 years ago, led the nation in sacks at Georgia State. He transfers in here to provide a pass rushing boost. But one thing about them is they've really just underperformed. They gave up 200 yards rushing on 40 carries to one of the nation's best running games. I mean, those are not terrible numbers. But again, quite talented this defensive line is. They need to prove it, and this is a great opportunity to do so. They did not get in the backfield a whole lot, only 6 tackles for loss. That's not bad. That's a pretty good number. But they had no sacks. I don't know how many times Georgia State dropped back. Considering they were down in the second half, I'd imagine a good bit. But that's a big concern of South Carolina, is getting to the passer, slowing down the run, because they have the players to get it done. I just want to see it happen. It remains to be seen, but I think this would be a great opportunity for them to do that. Overall, they're pretty sound South Carolina defense. This is a big part of any success they'll have this year. That's why this team is got so much upside, because of the guys up front and in the back end, and then the leader in the middle in Johnson. So South Carolina, this is a big opportunity to prove what their defense can do. I thought they did a pretty good job last week, only 200 yards and 14 points to Georgia State, but at the same time, this is a great big jump up in competition. No disrespect to Georgia State, because Sean Elliott has done wonders with that program. Looking at the Arkansas defense, to kick things off, like I just alluded to when talking about the South Carolina offense, is as I expected, the secondary struggled downfield and got bailed out by poor QB play. I don't expect that from Rattler. Jalen Catalan, though, he's still an enforcer. He's one of the top tacklers for them. He's great in coverage. He's great as a downhill run stopper. He's going to be big week in, week out for them. Bumper Pool, Dre Sanders gives the middle of the defense great athleticism and playmaking. That's a touch when you're playing against Stogner and Jaheim Bell and whatnot. A guy like Marshawn Lloyd that can get involved as a pass catcher, more so McDowell, but still, this is a lot of athleticism for them in the middle, and that's big for this defense. They had no issues with Cincinnati's running game. They allowed 113 yards. Pass rush was still suspect, but Jordan Dominic did have a big strip sack late. I know Zach Williams was impressive as well. And Landon Jackson was 6'7". He's a player that I circled all offseason long. He was pretty impactful as well. Still very iffy on this unit, though. I like Terry Hampton and Eric Gregory in the middle. Hampton, he was a hard worker, a transfer they picked up from Arkansas State, actually. So I'm a little more optimistic about the depth now than I was in the offseason, but still, this is an iffy part because the secondary did not do well last year. I mean, there's times they're dropping 8 or 9 guys against Alabama, for example, and they're still getting beat downfield. Same can be said when you don't have a good pass rush either. So it's kind of like, what are we going to do here? Barry Odom, great defensive coordinator, but still, it's sometimes the personnel makes it difficult to call what you want to call. pass rush they're going to have to continue to develop, especially in this game, because I don't think the secondary this year is going to do very well. They do have guys like Dwight McGovern who have great ball skills. Cadwan, of course, we mentioned him. And this defense, they did a good job of getting into the backfield last week, but I think South Carolina has a little bit different challenge here because they will, capitalize on the big plays. Cincinnati wasn't exactly able to do so. I mean, they did at times, in the second half especially. Guys like McGovern, then with Miles Slusher, they're going to have to be big and, kind of revamping the secondary. Simeon Blair is kind of not an asset, really. He's kind of a liability in the back end for them. They still got some seniors, though. They still got some leaders. We'll see if they can start to put it together after watching film this week, but I think it's certainly going to be a big challenge. But the middle of the defense is the tone setters, and we'll see if that front four continues to develop and if they can put on display how much depth they have and prove me wrong. Looking at team comparisons, pretty even here. The quarterback, I think KJ Jefferson gets the edge. He's just more proven at this point in time than Spencer Rattler is, despite being a former number one recruit who was, a Heisman favorite. He really hasn't proven all that much. His freshman year was pretty good. Last year went south. Week one, he wasn't all that great. But he's still a very talented quarterback who's going to make a lot of waves this year in my estimation. Running backs, both teams are pretty deep at running back, but I think Raheem Sanders is the best runner out of all these teams. Christian Beal-Smith coming over, I don't think I talked about him earlier. That's good for South Carolina, coming over from Wake Forest and whatnot. Pass catchers, Arkansas, they don't have as much depth, but I do like their starting three. But South Carolina, they got more depth by far. If you look at their depth chart, I just think it's phenomenal. Stogner, Bell, Wells, Brooks, he was good. So I think pass catchers for South Carolina is the edge. Offensive line, South Carolina, they just have not proven it yet. We're just only 1 week into the year, so we'll see how much they can progress. But this is a big game for them. Same for Arkansas, is kind of trying to bounce back after what was kind of a poor effort up front. I mean, they still got their yards on the ground, but they were not really as physically dominant as we kind of expected them to be. Defensive line, kind of even. The only reason I don't give SC the edge is because it's another group that's not really proven. I love the talent they have. In Arkansas, I've been critical of them, and this is an opportunity, again, to prove that I was wrong. And, I'll be looking forward to it because they have some talented, exciting players like Gregory and Terry Hampton I like. So we'll see what happens there. Linebackers, it's pretty obvious. Bumper Pool is one of the nation's top linebackers. And Drew Sanders, I like his athleticism, his ability to cover. So I'm going to give LB's the edge, even though Brad Johnson is a big-time leader for them. In the secondary, I'm going to give it to South Carolina, one of the nation's top secondaries, led by Cam Smith, of course. Devontae Reed, I think he's having a big-time year from Central Michigan as well. So I'll give them the edge because I was also highly critical of the Arkansas secondary. This is going to be a fun game, though, regardless. Looking at my final thoughts on the prediction, I picked South Carolina in the preseason to win this one, so I'm going to pick them here in week 2. I usually stay true to my predictions in the first month of the year, and then after that I'll kind of start switching things up. South Carolina, get off on third down, much like last week, versus a similar style, just protect the ball. And they were great on third down. I think they're like 5 of 17 against Georgia State. I'll pull up that number. But for Arkansas, must defend better down the field, stay ahead of the sticks. That's going to be important. You want to grind down this South Carolina defensive line that has shown struggles against the run. I do think that they have potential to dominate, but we have not yet seen it. So that's going to be big for them. South Carolina 5 for 17 on defense on third down. They're also 3 of 14 on offense, so that's a big reason why they struggled last week. So we need to be better than that. And I think they will here as we enter conference play. South Carolina, though, high upside team. Arkansas as well. Both of these teams are going to be really good this year, I think. The Hogs, though, this would be an opportunity for the secondary to prove me wrong because this is a legit passing attack when they're clicking on all cylinders. At least I think that potential is there for them. So that's going to be it for today's episode, guys. I'm going to take SC 31-28. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.